The certified letter arrives on a Tuesday morning, landing with an innocent thud against my apartment door while I rehearse presentation notes for the quarterly budget meeting. I almost ignore it, focused on memorizing growth projections that could finally earn me that promotion. Almost. My name stares back at me through the clear plastic window, Thalia Morgan, printed in severe black letters that feel like a warning. No return address except a law firm logo in the corner. I tear open the envelope, coffee mug balanced precariously in my other hand, and unfold the crisp paper inside. The first paragraph stops my breath mid-inhale. This letter serves as formal notice that Richard and Eleanor Morgan are seeking restitution in the amount of 40% of all income earned by Thalia Morgan from the date of this letter forward, as repayment for financial investment provided on May 15, 2016. My coffee mug slips through suddenly numb fingers, shattering against the kitchen tile of my Seattle apartment. Hot liquid splashes across my bare feet, but I barely register the burn. What the hell? I whisper to my empty kitchen. I scan the rest of the letter, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Financial investment, verbal contract, legally binding agreement, family obligation. Each phrase hits like a physical blow. The $20,000 check my parents gave me for college, the one presented as a gift. The one I'd thanked them for repeatedly despite working multiple jobs to cover the remaining expenses, was apparently a contract. A contract I never signed. A contract now demanding nearly half my income for the rest of my working life. I sink to the floor, mindless of the coffee and ceramic shards, letter trembling in my hands. Memories flood back unbidden. The celebration dinner at Pietro's, my father's favorite Italian restaurant in Reno. The white tablecloth spotted with red wine. My mother's pearl necklace catching the light as she leaned forward, smiling with unusual warmth. My acceptance to Washington State, clutched in my sweating hands, the first in our family to attend a 4-year university. "We have something for you, sweetheart," Dad had said, his voice thick with rare emotion as he slid an envelope across the table. Inside, a check for $20,000, more money than I'd ever seen. "No strings attached," Mom had added, squeezing my hand. "We're so proud of you." Dad had raised his glass in a toast. "This is our investment in your future, honey." Investment. The word rings differently now, 7 years later, as I sit among broken ceramic and cooling coffee. My hands stop shaking as sudden clarity washes over me. I reach for my phone and dial their number, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounds when my mother answers. "I just received a letter from your lawyer," I say without preamble, "about the money for college." A pause then. "We've been patient, Thalia. You've been making good money for years now." "It was a gift," I say, my knuckles white around the phone. "You specifically said no strings attached." "We raised you," Mom replies, her voice hardening. "Everything you have is because of us." I take a deep breath, willing my voice to remain calm. "I worked my way through college. I paid off my loans myself. That check covered less than a third of my expenses." "You're being selfish," Mom says. "Your father and I are getting older, and Jude needs help with his art career." "Ah, there it is. My younger brother. The real reason. Jude's struggling," she continues. "He needs a proper studio, better supplies. His work is finally getting noticed." I close my eyes, leaning against the kitchen cabinet. Jude, who dropped out of community college after 1 semester. Jude, whose art career consisted mostly of half-finished projects and elaborate excuses. "This isn't about Jude," I say, though we both know it is. "Family takes care of family," Mom replies. "What's yours is ours. That's how it works." The words hit with startling clarity. That's how it's always worked in our family. My achievements were never truly mine, they belonged to all of us. My college admission, my dean's list semesters, my first big promotion. Always our accomplishments, our success. Now my salary. I look down at the broken pieces of my favorite mug, the growing stain on the floor, the legal letter demanding 40% of everything I'll ever earn. "I need to go," I say, hanging up before she can respond. Standing, I carefully step around the mess and reach for a towel. As I kneel to clean up the spill, something fundamental shifts inside me. The family that should have been my foundation is trying to become my greatest burden, and I refuse to let them. 3 days after receiving the certified letter, I needed documentation, proving the $20,000 had been a gift. The search through old email accounts wasn't meant to be therapeutic, just practical. What I find instead turns my stomach to concrete. Dahlia's college fund. Return on investment. Reads the subject line of an email from my father to my mother, dated 2 weeks before they presented me with the check at Pietro's. The message loads with excruciating slowness, as if my laptop itself hesitates to reveal the truth. Eleanor, we need to be clear about our expectations. This isn't charity, it's an investment. When she starts making real money after graduation, we'll remind her about family obligation. Standard contract terms would demand 50%, but 40% seems fair considering she's our daughter. My mother's reply appears below. She'll never agree if we present it that way now. Better to call it a gift until she's established in her career. The return will be worth the wait. I sit heavily on my couch, my breath suddenly shallow. The room blurs at the edges as understanding crashes through me like a physical blow. This was never spontaneous generosity. It was calculated, planned a trap set 7 years ago, patiently waiting for me to earn enough to spring it. My phone rings. Their number. I let it go to voicemail. 2 days later, I stand in my parents' dining room in Reno, the same polished cherry table where we celebrated my college acceptance now covered with documents. Mom and Dad remain standing while I sit, the power dynamic not lost on me. Jude lounges in a corner chair, supposedly sketching, but I catch his occasional smirk when he thinks I'm not looking. This is a standard family contract, Dad explains, sliding a paper toward me. His voice carries the same authoritative tone he used when explaining why I couldn't attend sleepovers as a child. Your signature acknowledges what we've always understood. I scan the document, dated today but claiming to formalize an agreement from 7 years ago. I never agreed to this. It was implied. Mom interjects, pearl necklace catching the light as she leans forward. The same necklace she wore to Pietro's, so. When family helps family, repayment is assumed. That's how we raised you. You specifically said no strings attached. I counter, my voice steadier than I feel. Dad's face hardens. Families don't need written contracts, Thalia. Your word should be enough. My word? I never gave my word to pay you 40% of everything I earn for the rest of my life. You accepted the money, Mom says, as if this explains everything. Jude finally looks up. Some of us need the support more than others. His casual tone belies the calculated glance he exchanges with our parents. The threats begin on the drive back to my hotel. Mom calls, her voice artificially sweet through the car speakers. Your father and I have been patient, but if you force us to pursue this legally, it will affect your credit score, your reputation. Are you threatening me? I ask, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whiten. We're informing you of consequences. Dad cuts in, obviously on speakerphone. We'd hate to contact your employer about family resources being withheld. My stomach drops. You wouldn't. Family takes care of family, Mom repeats her mantra. We're prepared to do whatever necessary. After we disconnect, doubts gnaw at me. Had I misunderstood? Was there some conversation where I'd agreed to their terms? Memory is fallible. Perhaps mine has reconstructed a more generous version of events. That night in the hotel, I dumped the contents of my emergency file folder onto the bed, the one containing important documents I'd grabbed before leaving Seattle. Passport, birth certificate, immunization records, and there, tucked between old report cards, my college acceptance card. The cream-colored cardstock feels substantial between my fingers. I flip it over to find my mother's familiar handwriting. Congratulations, sweetheart. No payback needed. Just make us proud. Love, Mom and Dad. The card trembles in my hand, vindication washing over me in a wave of relief followed immediately by renewed anger. They had deliberately lied in writing. As I drive back to Seattle the next morning, the mountains of eastern Washington rising before me, I wonder if I should simply pay them back the $20,000 to end this nightmare, or fight a lawsuit that might damage relationships beyond repair. What would you do when the people who should protect you become the ones you need protection from? 2 days later, my phone buzzes during a budget meeting, lighting up with a number I don't recognize. I silence it, refocusing on the projection screen, where Q3 figures determine who gets promoted. The fourth unknown call today. My stomach tightens as I force a confident smile toward Vance, the department head who's evaluating candidates. Everything all right, Thalia? He asks when we break. Of course, I say, gathering my notes, just focused on those North Region numbers. Vance shifts his weight. Your parents called me yesterday. The room tilts slightly. My parents? They mentioned you're having financial difficulties. His eyes flick to my designer, watch a splurge after my last bonus. They seemed concerned about your stability. Cold spreads from my chest outward. My parents called you directly? And HR. Vance's mouth tightens. They forwarded some family contract. HR flagged it for me since I'm considering you for the senior analyst position. The promotion I've worked 18-hour days for. The reason I skipped 3 holidays to complete special projects. I see. My voice sounds distant, professional, while inside, something shatters. Back at my desk, Rachel from accounting leans over the partition. Some guy named Jude called for you twice. Said it was about a family emergency? My brother, suddenly concerned about family. Perfect. If he calls again, please take a message. I check my email, 17 new messages since the meeting. The first, from HR, includes an attachment labeled Morgan Family Financial Agreement with a note requesting clarification. That night, my apartment feels less like sanctuary and more like a foxhole. I jump when my phone rings, let calls go to voicemail, then lie awake replaying every interaction with my parents. What else could they do? Who else might they contact? Each time my eyelids grow heavy, another possibility jolts me upright. The next morning, my bathroom mirror reflects shadows beneath my eyes that concealer can't quite hide. I stare at my reflection, watching my hands tremble as I apply mascara. The woman looking back seems familiar but diminished somehow. On my lunch break, I buy a leather-bound notebook and create labeled sections: phone calls, emails, witness statements. Under phone calls, I record Vance's conversation verbatim, writing until my hand cramps. I forward every email from my parents to a special folder, screenshot text messages, save voicemails. Evidence grows page by page of a systematic attempt to destabilize my life. That Friday, 3 weeks after the letter arrived, I missed the promotion announcement. Instead, I sit in an urgent meeting with HR, explaining that no, I never signed any financial agreement with my family, and yes, I can provide documentation that the college money was presented as a gift. Your financial situation affects company confidence, the HR representative explains, not unkindly. The senior analyst position requires someone without complications. I nod, professional smile fixed in place while something vital caves inward. Walking home that evening, rain soaks through my thin jacket. I don't bother hurrying. The dampness matches something inside me, a creeping chill that settled in my bones since the letter arrived. I've stopped answering unknown numbers. My personal email remains unchecked for days. The space between my shoulder blades perpetually tenses, waiting for the next blow. At my apartment door, a wicker basket waits. Inside, still warm sourdough and homemade strawberry jam nestle beside a handwritten note. Some families are born, others are chosen. You're welcome at my table anytime. Margaret. My elderly neighbor from 4B. The woman who waters my plants when I travel. Who remembers my birthday with butter cookies. Who never asks for anything. For the first time in weeks, my lips curve upward. I clutch the basket all the way inside. The simple kindness almost unbearable against recent cruelty. That evening, I set up my laptop for the dreaded weekly video call with my parents. They appear on screen looking immaculate: Dad's pressed shirt, Mom's perfect makeup. The familiar living room backdrop suggests nothing has changed, though everything has. HR called us back. Dad begins without greeting. They're taking this seriously. They should, I reply, surprising myself with my steady voice. You're interfering with my employment. Mom's eyes narrow. We wouldn't need to if you'd simply fulfill your obligations. What obligations? A gift you've retroactively decided was a loan with impossible terms? You've always been selfish, Dad says, leaning toward the camera. Your brother needs that money more than you do. The familiar accusation, selfish, lands differently now. I've heard it whenever I prioritized my needs, choosing college across the country, declining holiday visits to focus on career advancement, refusing to fund Jude's 5th attempt at entrepreneurship. This isn't about Jude, I say, watching their expressions sharpen. This is about control. The silence stretches, confirmation humming beneath it. We've supported you your entire life, Mom finally says, voice brittle. Something clicks into place, a realization both devastating and liberating. Their support was never unconditional. It was currency, carefully tracked for future collection. I need to go, I say, ending the call before they respond. The next morning, Margaret knocks at my door. My grandson Robert is visiting this weekend. He's a consumer protection attorney. Thought you might like to join us for Sunday dinner. 2 days later, on Monday, Rachel stops by my desk. That Jude guy called again, saying you're having a breakdown and the company should consider your position. I told him you're the most stable person in the department and hung up. She shrugs. Family can be the worst sometimes. With each small kindness, my spine straightens. I add Margaret's note and Rachel's account to my documentation notebook. That evening, I dig through storage boxes until I find the graduation card, where Mom wrote, "No payback needed, just make us proud," alongside gift receipts and birthday cards referencing our gift to you when mentioning the college money. In my desk drawer, I discover something else: copies of checks I sent my parents after graduation. To help with the mortgage, I'd written on 3 of them. For Dad's medical bills on 2 others. Thousands given freely, with no expectation of return. I arrange everything chronologically in a folder labeled Evidence and fall into the first peaceful sleep I've had in weeks, until my doorbell rings at 7 a.m. Another certified letter, this one a summons to small claims court. I hold the paper in steady hands, something resolute settling into place. Some battles find you, whether you're looking for a fight or not, and some families should come with warning labels. On Thursday afternoon, the conference room at Robert's law office smells of coffee and determination. Papers spread across the polished oak table like battle plans, each document a piece of armor in my growing defense. We've been at this for hours, my neck stiff from bending over receipts and emails that span 7 years. Let's arrange everything chronologically, Robert says, pushing his wire-rimmed glasses up his nose. Start with the original gift card where your mother wrote, "No payback needed." I slide the faded congratulations card across the table. The looping handwriting stares back at me, Mom's perfect penmanship expressing a sentiment she now denies ever feeling. Robert places it at the beginning of our timeline, securing it with a paperclip. And here are the graduation texts, I say, handing him printed screenshots. Notice how they reference your achievement, and so proud of what you've accomplished. Not a single mention of debt or repayment expectations. Robert nods, his shoulders relaxing slightly, as he adds them to our growing arsenal. These establish a clear pattern. The gift, followed by years of silence about repayment. No reasonable person would suddenly expect 40% of your lifetime earnings for a $20,000 check. My phone buzzes against the table. I glance down, stomach tightening when I see Jude's name in my notifications. Against my better judgment, I tap the screen. You might want to see this, I say, sliding my phone toward Robert. His eyebrows rise as he reads my brother's public post. My sister, the thief in a pantsuit, stole from her own family. Education bought with our sacrifice. Success built on our investment. Time to pay your debts, sis. This actually helps us, Robert says, his voice gaining confidence. He's publicly admitting the lawsuit is retaliatory, not based on any real contract. Mind if I screenshot this? Before I can answer, my phone buzzes again. A flood of notifications from friends and colleagues pours in beneath Jude's post. Thalia's the most honest person I know. She worked 3 jobs through college while maintaining Dean's List. I remember her bringing ramen to work every day to save money for tuition. Unexpected warmth spreads through my chest. These people see me the real me, not the selfish daughter my parents have constructed in their minds. Your brother's plan backfired spectacularly, Robert says, allowing himself a small smile. My email notification chimes. Subject line, "After all, we sacrificed for you." I open it, reading aloud. Thalia, how could you turn your back on family? After all, we sacrificed to put you through college. After all the opportunities we provided. Your father and I went without vacations, new cars, even home repairs to invest in your future. And this is how you repay us? Robert's pen taps thoughtfully against the table. Their own words contradict their legal position. Notice how they keep switching between gift and investment language? This inconsistency destroys their credibility. Back at my apartment that evening, I stare at the cashier's check on my kitchen table. $26,000, the original, $20,000 plus 6 years' worth of interest. Every penny I could reasonably owe them, even if their gift had been a loan. Looking at the cashier's check for $26,000, the original amount plus interest, I hesitate. Would returning their gift with interest free me completely? Or would fighting through to the end bring the accountability they needed to face? My doorbell rings, startling me from my thoughts. Margaret stands in the hallway, holding a casserole dish. "Thought you might need some real food," she says, bustling past me into the kitchen. She spots the check and raises an eyebrow. "That's a lot of money to give away to people who don't deserve it." "It might be worth it for peace," I say, but the words sound hollow even to my ears. "Peace bought with ransom never lasts, dear." Margaret sets down the dish and pats my hand. "Robert called. He's filing a counterclaim for harassment and attempted financial coercion. I told him I'd be happy to testify about what a mess you've been these past weeks." "You'd do that?" "In a heartbeat. I've lived long enough to recognize when someone's being bullied by the people who should love them most." My phone rings. Rachel from work. "Your brother called the office again," she says without preamble. "I told HR everything, the harassment, the calls, how your parents contacted your boss. They're documenting it all for the court case." I sink into a kitchen chair, suddenly lightheaded. "Thank you," I whisper. "Nobody messes with my team," Rachel says firmly. "You've had our backs enough times. Let us have yours." After we hang up, I sit quietly, letting the realization settle over me. For perhaps the first time in my life, I feel truly validated. Not for what I can provide, not for how I reflect on someone else, but for who I am. My phone rings again. My father's name appears on the screen, calling alone unusual for him. "Thalia," he says when I answer, his voice lacking its usual certainty. "Perhaps we should discuss this situation without the lawyers." "I've tried that," I say evenly. "You made your position clear." A pause. "Your mother is very upset." "So am I, Dad." Later that night, an email arrives from Mom. "Perhaps we can discuss this privately. Just the three of us, like old times." I forward it to Robert without comment, then pick up the cashier's check. The court date is set for next month. This check represents my final offer, not because I owe them, but because I'm choosing freedom over vindication. I seal it in an envelope addressed to their lawyer, not to them. Never directly to them again. On Wednesday next month, I arrive at the courthouse 2 hours early, needing the quiet to settle my nerves. The polished marble floors reflect morning light as I rehearse responses with Robert, who keeps reminding me to breathe. "They're here," Robert whispers, nodding toward the entrance. My parents appear, looking older than when I last saw them. Dad's hands tremble as he clutches a manila folder. Mom's face is puffy, her pearl necklace, the same one from that college dinner, catching the light. They spot me and change course, heading straight for our bench. "Thalia, honey," Mom begins, her voice soft and practiced. "We need to talk before this goes any further." And I stand, gripping my leather portfolio. "I think we've talked enough." "We have a compromise," Dad says, his voice unsteady. His fingers shake as he withdraws papers from his folder. 20% instead of 40. It's more than fair. "Richard worked all night on these numbers," Mom adds, touching my arm. I step back. Her eyes narrow briefly before filling with tears. "We're your parents. This shouldn't be happening." Dad leans closer. "If you proceed with this, you'll never be welcome in our home again. Is that what you want? To destroy your family over money?" Robert clears his throat, but I raise my hand slightly. "This is my battle. I brought something too," I say, opening my portfolio and removing the cashier's check I've carried for weeks. $26,000. The original amount plus interest. I hold it out between us. "This closes our financial relationship, permanently." Mom's eyes widen. "This isn't about money. It's about family obligation." "I've created a timeline," I continue, my voice steadier than I feel. "Every card, email, and text where you called that check a gift. Every conversation where repayment was never mentioned. 7 years of silence until suddenly you demanded 40% of my income for life." Dad reaches for the cashier's check, but I pull it back. "I've already given you more than you gave me. After graduation, I sent money for your anniversary trip to Yellowstone. For the new water heater last winter. For Jude's art supplies." Each example lands like a quiet blow. I helped without being asked because that's what family does. Not this. They exchange glances, a silent calculation passing between them. "The judge will see things differently," Dad mutters. 30 minutes later, we sit in the wood-paneled courtroom. Judge Harriman, A woman in her 60s with silver-framed glasses reviews our documents with methodical attention. The room smells of furniture polish and anxiety. "Let me understand," she says, looking up. "You provided funds for your daughter's education, which you characterized at the time as a gift, correct?" My mother straightens. "We called it an investment in her future." "I have the card here," I interject, sliding it forward. "Congratulations. No payback needed. Just make us proud." The judge examines it, then looks at my parents. "And 7 years later, you're claiming this constituted a verbal contract for ongoing payments?" "She understood our expectations," Dad insists. Judge Harriman removes her glasses. "Do you know what gift means legally, Mrs. Morgan?" Mom blinks rapidly. "It was symbolic. We didn't mean an actual gift." The judge raises her eyebrows. "Symbolic gifts don't generally come with retroactive payment plans." She reviews my timeline, pausing at certain points to ask clarifying questions. When she reaches the section documenting their calls to my workplace, her expression hardens. "I'm dismissing this case," she announces finally. "Furthermore, I'm granting Miss Morgan's counterclaim for legal fees in the amount of $3,000, payable within 30 days. Mom gasps. Dad's face flushes crimson. "But our daughter," Mom begins, "has provided substantial evidence that no contract existed," Judge Harriman interrupts, "and demonstrated considerable financial support to you after her graduation, which contradicts your claim of financial hardship. This matter is closed." Outside the courtroom, Jude waits by the water fountain, his expression darkening when he sees me. He wears the leather jacket I bought him last Christmas. "Congratulations," he mutters as I approach. "You'll regret this. Blood doesn't turn its back." I stop beside him, suddenly tired of fighting. Blood doesn't manipulate. I leave them standing there, walking toward the sunlight streaming through the courthouse doors. Robert follows, offering quiet congratulations. That evening, Margaret brings dinner and sits with me on my balcony. We watch the Seattle skyline glitter as night falls. "Have you heard anything?" she asks carefully. "Only rumors. Their friends are asking questions about the case." I sip my tea. "Dad's golf partner called me, wanting the real story." "Will you ever speak to them again?" Her question hangs in the evening air. I don't answer immediately. The truth is, I don't know. Years of silence about repayment, then sudden demands for nearly half my income. How do you rebuild after that? Taking the copy of the cashier's check from my pocket, I tear it into tiny pieces. The fragments flutter over the balcony railing, carried away by the breeze. "Maybe someday," I finally answer, "but only on my terms." 6 months later, the morning sunlight streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden rectangles across my hardwood floors. From the 12th floor apartment, Seattle's skyline stretches before me, a vast improvement from the third-floor view of the parking lot at my old place. I trace my finger along the window, outlining the Space Needle against the backdrop of Puget Sound. On my bookshelf, travel photos have replaced the obligatory family portraits. Me hiking in Olympic National Park. A weekend trip to Vancouver with Rachel. Margaret and I at Pike Place Market, laughing as fishmongers toss their catch. No forced smiles, no pose perfection, just genuine joy captured in candid moments. My desk holds a leather portfolio containing financial documents, a 5-year plan with retirement projections, investment strategies, and a savings account growing steadily each month. The top page bears my financial advisor's note. Excellent progress toward complete independence. I close the folder with a satisfied smile. This life belongs entirely to me. My laptop chimes with an email notification. I click it open, then freeze, staring at the screen. "Dear Miss Morgan, we are pleased to inform you of your acceptance to our executive MBA program." 7 years ago, another acceptance letter arrived, the one that started everything. I remember my trembling hands as I showed it to my parents, how their approval seemed more important than the achievement itself. Today, I forward the email to Rachel, Robert, and Margaret, with the subject line, "Celebration dinner tonight?" Within minutes, all 3 respond with enthusiastic yeses. At Canlis Restaurant, overlooking Lake Union, we clink glasses over white tablecloths. The setting sun casts rose-gold light across our faces. "To Thalia," Margaret says, her silver hair catching the light much like my mother's pearls once did. "The bravest woman I know." Robert raises his glass. "To boundaries that protect and freedom that heals." Rachel leans forward. And to investing in yourself. No strings attached. I taste the champagne, letting the bubbles dissolve on my tongue. Thank you for being here, for being the family I chose. Later that evening, I sit cross-legged on my couch, laptop balanced on my knees. I type the final paragraph of a blog post titled, "I paid my way out of my parents' debt trap," then hover over the publish button. The post is anonymous, names changed, locations altered, but the story remains powerfully true. My inbox already contains an invitation from a podcast host who specializes in financial manipulation and family trauma. She found me through Robert, who thought my story might help others recognize similar patterns. Your experience could be a lifeline for someone else drowning in family obligation, her email reads. My phone buzzes with a notification. A Venmo request from Jude. Hey sis, need to borrow $100 for art supplies. Will pay back as soon as possible. His first contact in 8 months. I open the app, my thumb hovering between the pay and decline buttons. Instead, I tap his profile and select block user. A quiet smile forms as I return to my laptop and close Venmo completely. As I delete the app, I wonder if true freedom comes from cutting ties completely or from establishing boundaries strong enough that no one can cross them without permission. What would you do? Rebuild with strict terms, or close the door entirely? I don't know the perfect answer, but as I click publish on my story, I know this much. My life is finally, completely my own.